Okay, so the second part is how does our media product develop conventions of real media products? There are again a few examples of how our product does actually develop upon certain generic conventions. One of these is the use of our voiceover. Um, Obviously, in a few of the products that I looked into, there were voiceovers. For example, Stranger Than Fiction and sign language. But in these, because the film is a short film, it lasts a short amount of time. This means that the narrative is very condensed down into that small time slot, which can make it kind of hard to for the audience to get to grips with. So generally, these voiceovers were used to aid the fact that the narrative has been condensed so much in order to help the audience to understand more what is going on. And obviously, our product does use a voiceover, but we develop upon the generic conventions of describing the narrative, because our voiceover actually talks about not so much about the narrative, but more about the question of how do we know whether life is a dream. It sort of goes into talking about lucid dreaming and all that. So that's one way that we develop upon it. I'll just let our voiceover, an example of our voiceover, play now.
Your perception is conscious, but you're dreaming. What if you knew what you were dreaming, but couldn't get out of it?
Okay, so another way is that throughout our piece, a very conventional way, throughout our piece, obviously, we have a young character growing up and going through their cycle of life from young to old, and this is a very conventional way to portray a growth of a character, and I have seen this several times in other short films. But our product develops upon this generic convention because although we technically do have a young character who then goes to a primary school character, to a secondary school character, to a 21-year-old, to an old man, um, after we see the old man sequence, it then jumps back to the 21-year-old's character's sort of second half of his sequence, which sort of breaks that cycle and goes back in time and relives one of the character's sequences. So that's sort of the part that adds the twist into the whole product. That's another way that we have developed upon the conventions of real media products. And another example is obviously in many short films we want the audience feel as if they want to have like relief and they want to feel positive by the end of the film. So many short films do actually have good happy endings and leave it on a positive note so that the audience feel happy by the end of it. And although to a certain extent the end of our product can be interpreted as a happy ending, obviously we see the 21-year-old character waking up next to the girl or his girlfriend. We obviously develop upon this convention because although they are seen to be happy, the audience are still left with the question: is what we're viewing now a dream? How do we know that this last sequence is still not part of the dream? And obviously it allows the audience to make their own decision for themselves, because they don't actually know whether that part is still a dream. So obviously that's another way that we develop upon the conventions.